Beyond forgiveness, releasing resentment's grip. What if the peace you're searching for is being blocked by something you refuse to let go of? We often talk about forgiveness, how important it is to forgive others, to move on, to let bygones be bygones. But what if forgiveness isn't enough? What if there's something deeper still gripping your heart, like a shadow that lingers even after the light has returned? That something is resentment. And unlike anger, which flares up and fades, resentment simmers. Quietly, patiently. It becomes part of the way we walk, the way we breathe, the way we see the world. Sometimes we don't even notice it's there, until peace becomes a stranger and joy feels unreachable. Today, I want to take you on a journey, not just into forgiveness, but beyond it. A journey toward true emotional liberation through the timeless wisdom of Buddhism. Resentment, the quiet thief of peace. Resentment doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't throw things or shout. Instead, it whispers stories in your mind, over and over again. He should have never done that to me. She always gets away with everything. I can't believe I was treated like that. And slowly, those stories become walls. Walls between you and the people you once loved. Walls between you and your own peace of mind. Have you ever noticed how a single unresolved hurt can color your entire perception of someone, or even an entire chapter of your life? That's the grip of resentment. And it's stronger than most of us like to admit. What the Buddha taught about holding on. The Buddha taught that clinging, whether to pleasure, possessions, or pain, is the root of suffering. That includes clinging to resentment. One of the most powerful metaphors from Buddhist teachings is this: holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Resentment is no different. We think we are protecting ourselves by holding on to what they did to us. But what we are really doing is feeding the fire of suffering within ourselves. So here's a radical question. What if letting go isn't about them at all? What if it's entirely about you? Beyond forgiveness, a deeper release. Forgiveness, in many ways, is a mental act. It's saying, I choose not to hold this against you. And that's a powerful start. But resentment lives deeper, in the body, in the emotional memory, in the nervous system. To truly release it, we have to feel it, to sit with the pain, to recognize how it has shaped us, and then, gently, to offer it space to dissolve. Buddhist practices like loving-kindness meditation, metta, and mindfulness are not just spiritual ideas, they're tools for this very process. You don't have to pretend the pain didn't happen, but you can choose not to carry it anymore. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the person who hurt you. Now, imagine yourself placing that heavy emotional baggage between you and walking away without it. That is the beginning of real freedom. Why we resist letting go. But let's be honest. Sometimes we don't want to let go. Not really. Because holding on gives us a sense of power, a feeling that we are still in control. If I let go of this pain, does that mean they win? Does it mean what they did was okay? No. Letting go doesn't mean condoning. It means refusing to let someone else's actions define your inner world. You were never meant to carry that weight forever. When I started practicing Buddhist compassion exercises, I didn't expect them to bring up so much buried resentment. But over time, as I allowed myself to feel it fully, and stopped judging myself for still feeling it, I noticed something shift. Not overnight, but gradually. It felt like I was no longer dragging a chain behind me. The space that resentment leaves behind. Here's the most beautiful part. When resentment leaves, something else takes its place. Sometimes it's lightness. Sometimes it's sadness, but with clarity. Sometimes it's silence, pure, calm, and healing. And eventually, it becomes joy. A joy that doesn't need a reason. A joy that's no longer tied to what happened or didn't happen. It's just there, because you finally made space for it. So I ask you now, what old pain is still living in your heart? What would happen if you stopped fighting it and started releasing it? You don't have to do it all today. Just notice, breathe, be kind to yourself, and when you're ready, gently open the door and let it go. Because beyond forgiveness, there is a freedom that no one can give you, but yourself. Beyond forgiveness, where peace truly begins. Are you secretly holding on to a grudge that's eating away at your peace? You might not think so, but resentment has a way of disguising itself as righteousness, as memory, even as self-protection. And slowly, it starts to live rent-free in our hearts. Until one day, we realize peace has quietly slipped out the back door. This video isn't just about forgiveness. It's about something deeper. It's about releasing the silent grip of resentment and discovering a freedom that, honestly, most of us have never truly tasted. 1. Resentment hides where we least expect it. Have you ever caught yourself thinking about a conversation from years ago? Maybe someone who never apologized. A family member who always took you for granted. A betrayal you've told yourself you've moved on from. But deep down, it still stings? That's not just a memory. That's emotional residue. And that residue is what we call resentment. The tricky part is, resentment doesn't always feel like rage. Sometimes, it feels like exhaustion. Like emotional distance. Like a voice in your head whispering, they don't deserve your kindness. And the longer we carry it, the more we confuse it with who we are. We say things like, I just have a hard time trusting people. I've learned not to expect much from others. I'm just protecting my peace. But is it really protection? Or is it a prison? 2. What Buddhism teaches about this hidden pain. In Buddhism, suffering isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's subtle, quiet, invisible. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is clinging, and that includes clinging to our hurt. Imagine this. You're holding a hot coal, ready to throw it at someone who hurt you. But in the meantime, it's your hand that's burning. That's what resentment does. We think we are punishing them by holding on. But all the while, it's us who can't sleep. Us who keep replaying the story. Us who feel bitter, closed, and emotionally distant, even from people who didn't hurt us. And so the suffering spreads. 3. Forgiveness isn't the final step. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people stop at forgiveness. We say, I've forgiven them, and move on. But forgiveness is only the beginning. It's like opening the window. Releasing resentment means stepping outside. You see, forgiveness is often a decision. But releasing resentment? That's a practice. A daily choice. A deep inner shift. And this is where ancient practices become modern medicine. 4. Mindfulness, loving kindness, and the real work of letting go. If you've ever practiced metta, or loving kindness meditation, you know how uncomfortable it can be. You start by wishing well to yourself, then to someone you love, then to someone neutral, and finally, to someone who's hurt you. Wait, what? Yes, you actually wish well to the person who wounded you. At first, it might feel fake, forced, maybe even infuriating. But with time, something softens, because you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you, to clean the emotional toxins out of your system. Because resentment is poison, and compassion is the antidote. 5. But what if they never apologized? Let's be honest, one of the hardest parts of letting go is not getting closure. They never said sorry. They never owned up. Maybe they even got away with it. And that feels unfair, doesn't it? But here's a radical idea from Buddhist psychology. You don't need closure from someone else. You can give it to yourself. You can say, I acknowledge the pain. I wish things were different. And I choose to release this, not because they deserve peace, but because I do. 6. The freedom on the other side. Let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you didn't carry that old weight anymore? What might open up for you, emotionally, spiritually, even physically, if you stopped replaying that story? Imagine waking up and feeling light. Not because everything is perfect, but because your heart is no longer a storage unit for old wounds. That freedom is possible. And it starts not with a grand gesture, but with a whisper, a breath, a moment of honesty, a gentle, trembling yes to finally letting go. Closing thoughts, this is your invitation. So if you've made it this far, maybe something in you is ready. Ready to move past the story, past the pain, past the idea that holding on keeps you safe. Because the truth is, peace begins where resentment ends, and no one can walk that path for you. But every step you take toward release is a step toward wholeness, freedom, and a joy that no one, not even your past, can take from you. Take a breath. Place your hand on your heart, and say to yourself, softly but clearly, I release this, for me. The hidden cost of holding on. Have you ever wondered how much of your emotional energy is spent, not on what's happening right now, but on something you haven't let go of? We talk a lot about stress, about anxiety, even about burnout. But there's a hidden cost we don't often name: resentment. Not the loud kind. Not screaming matches or dramatic exits. I'm talking about the quiet kind, the slow, silent kind. The kind that simmers just beneath the surface, while stealing your peace, one unspoken thought at a time. Today, we are going to explore the hidden cost of holding on. Not just to pain, but to the stories, grudges, and emotional weight we were never meant to carry this long. 1. The invisible leak. Let's start here. Resentment doesn't always show up as anger. Sometimes, it shows up as exhaustion. A conversation that drains you. A family gathering you dread. A partner's voice that triggers something old and unresolved in you. And you wonder, why am I always so tired? But it's not your schedule. It's not your to-do list. It's the emotional backpack you carry into every room. Imagine your mind as a battery. Now imagine resentment as an app quietly running in the background, 24/7. You don't see it, but it's draining your charge. Your creativity. Your presence. Your joy. The real cost of holding on isn't just mental, it's spiritual. It's your aliveness. 2. How resentment sabotages connection. I want to tell you a story. A woman in her early 50s, let's call her Maria, once told me she hadn't spoken to her sister in over a decade. Not because of some big betrayal, but because of a million little things. Moments never addressed. Words never spoken. Frustrations never released. I'm just tired of always being the one to call, she said. But when I asked, what do you miss most about her? She paused, teared up. Her laugh. We used to laugh until we couldn't breathe. That's what resentment does. It builds walls made of silence. It creates distance in relationships where love still lives, but can't breathe. And slowly, it convinces us that our loneliness is someone else's fault, when in truth, it's our own pain, wrapped in protection. 3. The myth of self-protection. We often hold on to resentment thinking it keeps us safe. If I forgive, I'll be vulnerable. If I let this go, I'll get hurt again. But here's the paradox. The longer we hold on, the more we hurt ourselves. Buddhist philosophy speaks deeply to this. In the Dhammapada, it says, by holding on to anger, you are like a man who wants to hit someone else, but picks up a burning ember with his bare hand. You may think resentment is your armor, but in reality, it's a wound, one you keep pressing. Ask yourself honestly, has holding on to that resentment made you feel stronger? Or just lonelier? 4. A simple thought experiment. Let's try something together. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the person you resent. Not their best moment. Not their worst. Just them, as a human being, flawed, complex, maybe even unaware of your pain. Now, imagine you could press a button, and all the resentment you carry toward them would dissolve. No, they don't have to apologize. No, they don't need to understand. But you are free. What changes? Maybe your shoulders drop. Maybe your chest feels lighter. Maybe you smile, without knowing why. That's the version of you that exists beyond resentment. Not weaker, not naive, but whole. 5. What letting go actually looks like. Now, let's be real. Letting go isn't some poetic moment where the skies part and everything's healed. It's messy. It's layered. And it often happens in the smallest ways. Choosing not to send that angry text. Saying a silent prayer instead of rehearsing revenge. Breathing through the urge to rehash old wounds. Buddhist practices like mindfulness and loving-kindness meditation are powerful tools here. Not because they erase your memory, but because they give you space. Space to see your pain without becoming it. Space to choose how you respond. Space to stop carrying what no longer serves your soul. 6. Your energy is sacred. Here's something I wish more people said out loud. Your energy is sacred. What you give your attention to becomes your life. And every moment spent replaying old resentment is a moment stolen from the beauty of now. You were not born to live inside old battles. You were born to love, to grow, to evolve, to feel joy that is unshaken by what others did or didn't do. So maybe today's the day you choose to stop bleeding energy into something you can't change. Not because it didn't matter, but because you matter more. So, here's my invitation. Let go, not because they deserve peace, but because you do. Let go, not to erase the past, but to reclaim your future. Let go, not for closure, but for clarity. Because the real win is waking up one day and realizing your heart is no longer a battlefield. It's just a heart again. Soft, alive, free. Beyond the should, why forgiveness isn't always the answer. Have you ever felt like you should forgive someone, but deep down, you just couldn't? Like there's this voice in your head whispering, it's the right thing to do, just let it go. But your heart says, I'm not ready. I don't know how. If you've ever wrestled with that inner conflict, you're not alone. This video is for anyone who has ever felt burdened by the word forgiveness, as if it's a door you're expected to walk through, even when your soul is still bleeding. Today, we are going beyond the should. We are asking, what if forgiveness isn't always the answer? And what if true peace doesn't come from forcing yourself to forgive, but from understanding something deeper? 1. The pressure to just forgive. In our culture, we hear it all the time. Let it go. You'll feel better if you forgive. Holding a grudge just hurts you, not them. And there's truth in that. But there's also pressure. Unspoken, quiet, heavy pressure. What if the wound is still raw? What if the hurt runs deeper than anyone knows? What if forgiving too soon feels like betraying yourself? You see, forgiveness is often treated like a spiritual band-aid. Just slap it on. Say the words. Move on. But real healing doesn't happen on command. It happens when you're seen. When you're heard. When you're honest with where you actually are, not where others think you should be. 2. The difference between releasing and condoning. One of the biggest reasons people resist forgiveness is this. We fear that if we forgive, we are saying what happened was okay. Let's clear this up. Forgiveness, or more accurately, emotional release, is not the same as condoning. You can let go of the burden in your heart without approving of what was done. You can release resentment without minimizing the harm. You can heal without inviting the person back into your life. Think of it like setting down a heavy bag. The bag doesn't disappear. It doesn't become beautiful. You're just choosing not to carry it anymore. Because here's the truth no one talks about. You can hold someone accountable and still choose your own pace. 3. The myth of moral superiority. There's another hidden danger in the way we talk about forgiveness. Sometimes, it becomes a badge of moral superiority. Like, I forgave them, so I'm the bigger person. But real peace isn't a performance. It's not something we do to earn virtue points. If forgiveness becomes a performance, it loses its healing power. Because underneath it is still pain, still resentment, still the need to be right. Sometimes, not forgiving yet is the most honest thing you can do. And honesty is a sacred step toward wholeness. 4. What you can do instead. If you're not ready to forgive, that's okay. There are other forms of release, gentler, quieter, and often more healing. Start by acknowledging what happened. Without sugarcoating. Without pretending. Just name the truth. That hurt me. That changed me. That should not have happened. Then, allow yourself to feel anger, sadness, betrayal. Let it move through you, without judgment. In Buddhism, this is called mindful awareness, the act of being with what is, without adding layers of guilt or self-shame. You might also practice what's called non-attachment. It's not about detaching from people or shutting down emotions. It's about loosening your grip on the story, the loop that plays over and over in your mind, trying to rewrite the past. You may not be ready to forgive the person, but you can forgive yourself for needing time, for still feeling pain, for being human. 5. True liberation comes from within. Here's a shift that changed everything for me. Forgiveness isn't something you do for them. It's something you do for you. But only when you're ready. And sometimes, emotional liberation comes not from forgiving the person, but from finally seeing that your worth, your peace, your future, is not tied to their apology. You don't need them to say they're sorry. You don't need justice to find joy. You don't need closure to create your next chapter. You need truth. You need gentleness. You need presence. And most of all, You need permission to heal in your own time, in your own way. 6. An invitation, not a command. So if you're watching this and you're carrying pain, not just the memory of what happened, but the extra layer of guilt that says, I should have let this go by now. I want you to know something. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not behind. You're not weak. You're not less spiritual. You are in process. And healing is not a straight line. It's a spiral. Forgiveness is not a requirement. It's an invitation. And sometimes, just knowing you have the choice, that you are not obligated to forgive before you're ready, is enough to soften the tightest part of your heart. Closing reflection. When you're ready, you'll know. Maybe one day you'll forgive them. Maybe you won't. But even now, you can choose something powerful. You can choose to stop blaming yourself for feeling hurt. You can choose to stop performing healing before it's real. You can choose to turn inward and say, I'm here for you, to the most wounded part of yourself. Because that is what healing actually looks like. And whether or not forgiveness ever arrives, your well-being, your peace, your wholeness, those are already waiting for you. Buddhist wisdom, a practical path to emotional release. Have you ever carried the weight of an emotion for so long that it began to feel like part of who you are? Maybe it's the lingering sting of betrayal, or that quiet anger you've been holding onto for years, buried deep but never really gone. We often try to let go. We tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel this anymore. Or we hear advice like, just forgive, move on. But what if the path to emotional release isn't about pushing the feeling away, or pretending we've healed when we haven't? What if it's about seeing the emotion clearly, without judgment, without clinging, and gently allowing it to dissolve on its own? This is where Buddhist wisdom offers us something radically different. Not a quick fix, not a forced forgiveness, but a compassionate path inward, rooted in mindfulness, impermanence, and loving kindness. Let's begin with one simple but powerful truth. Everything changes. In Buddhism, this is called anicca, the law of impermanence. And it doesn't just apply to seasons or relationships or the aging of the body. It applies to our emotions too. Think about it. The sadness you felt last week, is it exactly the same today? The anger that once burned hot, has it not faded, even slightly, with time? Emotions, like clouds in the sky, are passing. But when we resist them, when we replay old hurts, when we define ourselves by our pain, they tend to linger. They stick. Not because they want to, but because we won't let them move on. So how do we begin to loosen that grip? We start with mindfulness. Now, mindfulness isn't just about sitting still or breathing deeply, though those things help. It's about watching our emotions without getting caught in them. Observing, not reacting. Noticing the tightness in our chest, the heat in our face, the story running through our mind, and saying, I see you. One simple practice you can try is this. When a difficult feeling arises, pause and silently name it. This is anger. This is resentment. This is grief. By naming it, we shift from being the emotion to being the witness of it. It's like stepping out of the storm and watching it pass from a safe distance. Of course, this doesn't mean the emotion disappears right away, but it loses some of its power. And over time, with practice, you might find that you don't need to force anything. The release happens naturally, like leaves falling from a tree in autumn. But mindfulness alone isn't always enough. Sometimes, we also need warmth. That's where metta, or loving kindness, comes in. Metta meditation is a practice of sending well wishes, first to ourselves, then to others, even those we struggle with. And I know, this can feel impossible. Why would I wish happiness for someone who hurt me? But here's the secret. Metta isn't about excusing anyone. It's not about saying what they did was okay. It's about freeing you from the poison of hatred. Because hatred, as the Buddha said, doesn't cease by hatred. It ceases by love. You don't have to start with your enemies. Begin with yourself. Say gently, may I be safe. May I be free. May I find peace. And when you're ready, expand outward, slowly, tenderly. You're not forcing forgiveness. You're softening the edges of your heart, one breath at a time. I remember a woman who shared that for years, she carried anger toward her father, who had abandoned their family when she was just a child. Every time she tried to forgive him, she felt like she was betraying herself, as if forgiving meant saying it was okay. But one day, During a loving-kindness meditation, she tried something different. She didn't try to forgive. She didn't try to forget. She simply said, "May I be free of this anger. May I be at peace." And that shifted everything. She wasn't letting him off the hook. She was letting herself off the hook. Off the hook of pain she didn't ask for. Off the hook of a burden she no longer wanted to carry. This is the heart of emotional release in Buddhism. Not erasing the past, but gently releasing your attachment to it. It's not passive. It's deeply courageous, because it means facing your pain with honesty and choosing not to let it define you. So I ask you, what emotion are you still holding? And more importantly, are you ready to let it pass? Not today, maybe. Not all at once. But someday. Could you begin? Just by watching it? Just by breathing with it? Just by wishing yourself peace? That's enough. That's everything. Because healing doesn't shout. It whispers. It whispers in the silence between thoughts, in the breath between tears, in the moment when you say, "I don't have to carry this anymore." So if you've been waiting for permission to release the pain, this is it. Not because you should, but because you can. And you're ready. Detaching from the narrative, reclaiming your power. Let me ask you something that might hit close to home. How many times have you replayed a moment from your past, over and over again, like a broken record in your mind? Maybe it was a betrayal. Maybe it was something someone said, or didn't say. Or maybe it was the silence itself, that heavy, hollow absence that lingered longer than it should have. And every time the memory plays, you feel the same sting, the same surge of anger, the same ache of disappointment. We tell ourselves that if we keep revisiting it, we'll somehow make sense of it. We'll figure out what we should have said. We'll make them understand how much they hurt us. But the truth is, most of us aren't replaying the past to understand it. We are reliving it to justify our pain. And in doing so, we unknowingly trap ourselves in a narrative that keeps us small, stuck, and suffering. The loop of suffering. The Buddha once said, "Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional." What he meant is this: life will bring painful moments, we can't avoid them. But suffering? That's what happens when we keep holding on. When we cling to a story, "They shouldn't have done that to me." "I'll never be okay until they apologize." "I'm broken because of what happened." These thoughts might feel true. They might even feel empowering at first, like they give us control. But in reality, they reinforce our identity as the victim. And here's the hard part to accept. Every time we retell that story in our mind, we reopen the wound. We become the scriptwriter of our own suffering, reframing the narrative. So, how do we stop? How do we detach from the story that's been running the show for so long? It begins with a shift in perspective, a gentle, honest willingness to ask, what if this pain doesn't define me? What if I could see this differently? Not to excuse what happened, but to free myself from its grip. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone you trusted let you down deeply. Instead of replaying, "I can't believe they did that to me," you ask, "what was I hoping to receive from them? Can I give that to myself now?" Or instead of, "They never said sorry," you whisper to yourself, "I don't need their apology to heal. I need my own permission to move on." This isn't spiritual bypassing. It's not about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about choosing not to let that pain write the rest of your story. Practical ways to shift. Now, I know, shifting your perspective isn't something you just decide and it magically happens. It's a practice, a process, a path. Here are a few tools I've learned, both from Buddhist teachings and personal experience, that can truly help. Mindful observation. Each time that painful memory arises, instead of jumping into the narrative, take a breath. Observe it like a cloud passing through your sky. You might say to yourself, this is the thought of betrayal again. Label it gently. Don't judge it. Just witness. Rewriting the script. Try journaling the same event from a different perspective. What might the other person have been going through? What did the experience reveal about your own needs, values, or boundaries? This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it empowers your growth. Meditation, loving kindness. Send love to yourself. Then, when you're ready, send love to the person who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because your peace is too sacred to be held hostage by resentment. the freedom in letting go. Here's the beautiful, liberating truth. Your peace is not dependent on someone else's apology. Your healing does not need their permission. Your power is not found in waiting. It's found in reclaiming your narrative. You are not what happened to you. You are who you choose to become in response. And sometimes, the most powerful thing we can say is, I release this story now. I choose freedom instead. A gentle invitation. So I invite you, today, this moment, to ask yourself, what story have I been carrying that no longer serves me? And what would it feel like to finally put it down? You don't have to forget. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. But you can choose peace. You can choose to stop bleeding from wounds that no longer exist. As the Zen saying goes, let go or be dragged. Let this be the moment you rise. Not because it's easy, but because you are finally ready to be free. If this message resonated with you, remember, you are not alone on this path. And every step you take toward peace is a powerful act of love. For yourself, and for the world. Your blueprint for inner freedom. Have you ever carried a weight in your heart for so long, you almost forgot what it felt like to be without it? Resentment has a sneaky way of doing that. It starts as a small ache. Maybe someone hurt you, betrayed your trust, disappointed you deeply. And instead of healing, we revisit the pain over and over again, almost like we are trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution. But what if I told you, you don't need to wait for an apology, or closure, or even understanding from the person who hurt you, in order to be free? In this video, I want to offer you a blueprint, a simple, 3-step path to begin releasing resentment, starting today. This isn't just about forgiveness. It's about freedom. Your freedom. Step 1. Acknowledge the emotion, without the story. The first step is deceptively simple. Acknowledge that you're holding on to something, but do it without getting lost in the story. You see, most of us replay the same mental movie over and over again. He said this. She did that. I was right, they were wrong. And on it goes. But the more we replay it, the more deeply we carve that groove in our minds. So instead of diving into the narrative, pause and simply notice the feeling. There's anger. Here's grief. That's shame. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to analyze it. You just have to name it, like observing a cloud drifting through the sky. This practice, drawn straight from Buddhist mindfulness, creates a moment of space. And in that space, possibility is born. Step 2. Reframe the meaning. Now that you've named the emotion, it's time to gently question the story you've been telling yourself. Ask yourself, what have I made this mean about me? Have I been using this pain as proof that I'm unlovable? That I'll never be safe? That people can't be trusted? Most of the time, our pain is less about the event itself and more about the meaning we attach to it. But meaning is not set in stone. It's moldable. It's something we create, and therefore, something we can change. Reframing isn't about denying what happened. It's about reclaiming your role in the story. Instead of being the helpless victim, you get to be the wise one, the one who grew, who saw clearly, who now chooses peace over being right. Can you see how powerful that shift is? Step 3. Release the need for a different past. The final step, and perhaps the most radical, is releasing your need for the past to have been any different than it was. Now, I know that might sound impossible at first. How can I let go of the injustice, the betrayal, the deep, aching unfairness? But here's the truth. Your suffering doesn't come from the past event. It comes from your resistance to what was. When we cling to the idea that it shouldn't have happened, we freeze our energy in a moment we cannot change. But freedom comes not from fixing the past. It comes from no longer needing it to be fixed. This is where spiritual maturity blossoms. This is where the heart softens and the weight lifts. Letting go isn't giving in. It's reclaiming your life. Integrating this practice into daily life. Now, this 3-step process isn't a one-time fix. It's a way of living. The next time someone cuts you off in traffic, or your partner says something sharp, or a memory from years ago surfaces, pause. Breathe. Notice the emotion. Question the story. And ask, can I let this go, just for today? You're not trying to be a saint. You're just practicing. And practice doesn't mean perfection. It means repetition with kindness. You could even set a gentle reminder on your phone each morning. Today, I choose peace over replaying pain. Some days it'll be easier than others. That's okay. The real shift happens not in the dramatic moments, but in the quiet ones, in the spaces where you choose not to harden, but to soften. A final message. You have the power to choose freedom. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this. You don't need anyone else to change in order to be free. Not the ex who never apologized. Not the parent who never showed up. Not the boss who disrespected you. Your freedom is yours. It's always been yours. That may sound like a burden at first, but it's actually the most empowering truth in the world. Because if no one else needs to change, then nothing is stopping you from healing, except the belief that you can't. And that belief, you're allowed to let it go. So today, take a deep breath. Imagine unhooking yourself from the past, like gently untying a rope that's been knotted around your heart. You don't have to carry it anymore. The path to peace isn't far away. It begins in this very moment, with a choice. And you were always powerful enough to make it. Sparkles, you are not your story. You are the space in which the story ends, and peace begins. Sparkles.